Are you new to the ever-growing popular world of epoxy? If you are, stay tuned for this video. We're gonna start with the very basics. So guys, if you're new to our channel, if you're new to the epoxy world, my name is Rhonda Dracoulis and I'm with RK3 Designs. Today, we're gonna go back to the very basics of epoxy. I have a lot of videos on my channel from the very easy recipes to the more advanced recipes. But I get a lot of emails every week with very basic questions because so many people are jumping in to the epoxy world. So what I want to do today is let's start from square one. Let's talk about what kind of epoxy do you need in your project. Now there's several types of epoxies out there depending on what project you're doing. What we're going to really concentrate on today are the epoxies for the countertops, which is really what we kind of specialize in, what we teach our classes on, and what our business is based around doing kitchen redos and showers. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the products that I use, which is Stone Coat Countertop Epoxy. The reason I use Stone Coat, I believe it's a superior product, very, very easy to use and very, very durable. So we're gonna start off with their first product of Stone Coat Countertop. It's their regular epoxy. The epoxy is a 1-to-1 ratio and it's based on volume, not weight. Now there are epoxies out there that you do by weight. This is not by weight, this is by volume. So if you're doing 10 ounces, you're gonna do 5A and 5B. The regular Stone Coat epoxy is made to be used on a thin pour. You're not gonna wanna do molds, river tables, anything like that. It's made to be put over very thin. So we use the regular epoxy when we're doing almost all of our finishes. I get a lot of questions. What's the difference between the regular epoxy and the art coat epoxy? The only difference that you'll really notice is that the art coat has a lot more UV protective ingredients, meaning this product is going to be made to protect the surface longer from UV rays. So if you're doing a white finish, maybe a Carrara marble or something like that, or you're doing a light colored finish, or even a finish that's got predominantly white in it, you're gonna wanna use the art coat. Same mixing, 1-to-1, by volume, and everything else is the same. You're really not gonna tell much difference between using your regular and your art coat. You may have a little bit longer open time, and that's a good thing. The epoxies come in different sizes. So when ordering, it gets a little confusing. So if you order, say, a half-gallon kit, what you're gonna get is you're gonna get a 1/4 gallon of A and a 1/4 gallon of B. This is gonna give you your half-gallon. If you order a 1-gallon kit, you're gonna get a half-gallon of A and a half-gallon of B, giving you a 1-gallon kit. Same thing applies to the 2-gallon. You order a 2-gallon kit, you're gonna get 1 gallon of A and 1 gallon of B. You can find these on my website, rk3designs.com. All right, so let's go into prepping the surface to get ready to pour these products. Once you've decided what finish you want to do, now it's time to prep. All right, so I highly suggest that you really practice before you jump in and do your first big project. Also, if you are doing this as a business, you're going to be doing sample boards to show a customer. Now, the sample boards that we use for our customers and also in our classes are made of MDF 1/2 inch. So we cut them 12 by 16, they're 1/2 inch. And then what we do is you notice that right now, they're at a 90-degree angle. And epoxy doesn't really do well on 90-degree angles, because what happens is as the epoxy flows, it'll actually build up along this edge and it won't roll over. You'll have surface tension right here. So what we do is we come in and we take a router bit, 1/4 inch round over bit, and we router our edges both on the top and the bottom. So now our edges are rounded, our epoxy will flow over and we'll have some really nice edges. Now what we did on this board is we painted it with 2 coats of either the Stone Coat Countertop undercoating or a latex paint, and what we like to use is the Behr paint and primer. Now let me tell you a little bit about the difference of these 2 products. If you use the Behr paint and primer, you're going to want to do 2 coats, lightly sanding in between each coat. Let it dry and off gas for 24 hours before you go to your next step, which is to pour your first coat of epoxy, which we refer to as your color coat. Or instead of using this, you can use the Stone Coat Countertop undercoating. Comes in black and white. Now the difference is this is an epoxy paint. It's gonna dry a lot quicker. Same process, 2 coats, lightly sand in between coats, but this product, you only have to wait 4 hours before you pour your epoxy. So if you're trying to get everything done on the same day, this is the product you want to use. Behr paint and primer, 24 hours. Undercoating, 4 hours. So a couple of other things that you could use as sample boards are TV trays from Walmart, less than $10. You could put a really cool finish on there. You can even come in and put a logo. These are great gifts. And now you've done a practice board and you actually have something that you could use or you could give as a gift. Another thing that we really like to use is Lazy Susan rounds. We get these at Home Depot, Lowe's, I think the dollar store even has some. But all it is a round piece of board, and we made sure that the edges are nice and round. We pour a finish, we put a logo, we'll then attach a Lazy Susan turntable on the back, and you've got yourself a really good gift. Now we do have videos on our channel that show you guys how to do logos. All right, so the really cool thing about the epoxy is that you can pour over existing material, existing substrates, all kind, as long as it's prepped correctly. So if you're pouring over, say, an existing laminate or a natural stone, a granite, something that's non-porous, you want to make sure that you prep it correctly. So you want to really sand well with about an 80 to a 120 grit. And the reason you want to do this is so that you're going to create a mechanical bond for the products that you're going to lay on top of that substrate. So what you want to do first is start off on any non-porous surface, anything shiny, anything slick. And you're going to want to start off with a really good bonding primer. I like XIM bonding primer. I've used it for years in my faux finishing business, and I've never had any issues with adhesion failure. So you'll do 2 thin coats of the bonding primer over your substrate, over your existing countertops or piece of furniture that you're doing. Let that dry. Then you're gonna proceed just like as if it were a piece of MDF. You're gonna then come in with either your undercoating, Stone Coat Countertop undercoating paint, which you let dry for 4 hours, or you'll come in with a latex paint. I use Behr paint and primer. Let that dry 24 hours, and then you're gonna proceed to your next step, which is actually pouring the epoxy. So I do have 2 videos that go into really great detail about how to prep on existing surfaces, your countertops, and how to tape and mask off everything. So we will link those videos in the video description below. Okay, so now we've prepped our surface. Now let's get ready to pour or mix our products. All right, so first of all, super important is that whatever surface you're pouring on, whether it be a sample board, whether it be a countertop that you're building, or a surface that you're pouring over in your kitchen, an existing surface, you need to make sure that it's level. Guys, this is super important because what will happen if it's not level, you'll have a beautiful finish, and then what will happen is over time, because your epoxy is moving and trying to self-level, it will all run to one end or whichever way your surface is tilting. So that's very important. You may need to shim it or do whatever needs to be done if you're pouring in place to get that level. Now we do have some other videos that we talk about pouring in place, and we'll address those issues. Now, a lot of times what we use are these cool little gadgets here. They're by Firefly Innovations. I'll also do a link in the descriptions below. And when we do sample boards or we do countertops, we're able to level our piece because each one of these spin, and you can make sure that your surface gets level by adjusting these individually. And like I said, these are available. They're called rocket levelers, and if you use code RK3 at checkout, you'll get a discount. All right, so now our project is leveled and it's time to get ready to mix. Okay, so you're ready to mix. There's gonna be a few tools that you're gonna need to have, also some supplies that you're gonna need to kind of keep in stock. We really like the mixing buckets by TCP. We get them on Amazon. I'll also have a link for you guys there. And we always have several sizes on hand. This is the really large, the big 5-quart. Also comes 64 ounce. We have a 16 ounce. I believe it also comes in a 10 ounce. So there's a lot of different sizes, kind of depending on what type of projects you're gonna be pouring. Also, it's a good idea to have some just plain solo type cups, especially if you're doing dirty pours. You'll need a lot of these. And then we have some of the smaller cups that are calibrated. We use these for sample boards, or if we're just mixing up a little bit of color, maybe at one time. And then we always have little bitty cups for various types of pours. Also, tongue depressors. We have several sizes of the tongue depressors, and then the little popsicle sticks, and these are all for mixing. And gloves, super important. Some people have allergic reactions to epoxy. Now, the Stone Coat products that we use are 0 VOCs. We don't need to wear PPE as far as respirators or masks. Most of the time, the only type of VOCs that we come across in our business is spray paint. And at that point, we do wear proper PPE. But gloves are super important because it's super sticky. All right, also a drill. Now, I use a corded drill when I'm here in the shop. When we go on location, I'll have a cordless drill. But for me, especially if you're a girl with, I've got shoulder problems, I like this drill because it's a lot lighter, even though it has a cord. I do like it because it is a lot lighter and it doesn't hurt my shoulder quite so bad. And then we get these little mixing paddles. You can get them at either Amazon, I think Walmart has some, and this is what we use to mix our products in some of the bigger buckets. Now, if we're mixing just a little bit at a time, I'll just use a stir stick and I'll be fine. Next, torches. All right, so we use our torches for a couple of different things. Mainly, we use it to pop the bubbles after we mixed and we've poured the product out on the surface. You can use a heat gun if your heat gun is blows pretty hard and it's pretty hot. You can get rid of the bubbles, but I really like using the torch, and I also use it for different types of effects that I can't really get with a heat gun. But if you get a torch, it's super important that the torch head that you get has to have the hole in it. It's got to be MAP gas compatible. You don't have to use MAP gas. On this head, we've actually just got a little can of the regular propane, but these are what the torch heads look like that we use. We get them from Home Depot. I believe you can also get them on Amazon, and we will definitely put a link down there for you guys on this one. All right, make sure it's got the hole. Next, alcohol. Not only to clean, but also to cause different effects in your finishes, and we've got a lot of videos where we show you guys how to use alcohol to get different effects. Now, it needs to be 91% or higher. Don't use the 50 or the 70%. It's got too much water in it. You just don't quite get the same effects. I do have a video where I talk about different types of products, either the isopropyl alcohol, we talk about acetone, we even talked about Everclear. Made a really good video. All right, so next, heat gun. Now, we teach classes. So I've got like 30 of these heat guns. We use it, it's a very inexpensive heat gun that we get from Harbor Freight. We've had really good success with these. If you would like to get a more expensive gun, absolutely, you're definitely able to do that. But because we have so many students in the class, we really don't want to get the super expensive heat guns. I actually use this daily in our business, and we have great success. I think they're $19. So, good little gun. Okay, so once the material's been poured out on your surface, I like to use a 1/8 by 1/8 square notch trowel. And if you notice, I'm from the South, and I often say a trowel, which really does get under the skin of some of my viewers, and they leave me not so nice comments. So, don't know what to tell you. I'm from the South. I say trowel instead of trowel. So, don't know what to tell you. If you don't like it, zip through that part. All right, so the reason I use this is because it gives me a very good way to level out my material. Often, however, I will use my hand, and the more videos you watch, you'll notice that I do use my hands a lot. All right, so after you trowel, you're gonna use a chop brush. Again, a lot of the times I skip this stage unless I'm doing a really big project. I will use a chop brush. This is one more level of insurance, me chopping to make sure that my product is thoroughly mixed. Okay, it's mixing time. All right, so remember, 1 to 1. So we're going to use 3 ounces per square foot is what's recommended for Stone Coat on most of their finishes. If you get into some of the more advanced finishes, melded marble, dirty pours, you're gonna be using upwards of 6 to 8 ounces per square foot. But for today, we're gonna just use 3 ounces per square foot. My sample board is a little over 1 square foot, so we're gonna be using 4 ounces. We're gonna do 2 ounces of part A and 2 ounces of part B. Now what I like to do, it gives me a little bit better, more accurate measurement if I pour part B first. And the reason I like to pour part B first is part B is less viscous. It's thinner, basically. So it's going to fall to the bottom very quickly. All right, so we're going to pour in 2 ounces of part B. And when I'm doing this, I like to get down on the level of the cup, and I get a much more accurate reading. All right, now I'm gonna come in with part A. Now you'll notice when I pour part A that it's quite a bit thicker, more viscous, and it's gonna drop through part B down to the bottom pretty quickly. That's why we get a little bit more accurate reading as opposed to pouring A first. But if you do pour part A first, it's no big deal. It doesn't mess up the product. It's still gonna mix very nicely. It's just sometimes you just get, like I said, a more accurate measurement if you pour in part B first. All right, so we're gonna mix for 2 minutes. Now, I'm using a hand, I'm actually just using a stick because I'm mixing up such a small amount of epoxy. If I were doing a whole countertop or a big piece of furniture or a shower, I would use my mixer with my paddle, and it'll just be a lot easier. I wouldn't have to hand stir. As I mix, I like to scrape the edges and then continue to mix, because what I'm doing is getting that product along the edge of my cup that's not 100% mixed up and incorporating it into the product. So that way I'm not gonna have any sticky spots once I pour out my material onto the surface. All right, so my material's mixed, and I'm gonna tint it with a little bit of the black Alumilite opaque dye. There are so many products out there that you could use to tint your epoxy. There's so many videos out there to show you guys how to use mica powders, different types of dyes and tints. So you'll want to definitely check that out. To me, that's probably the hardest thing about epoxy, is deciding what colors to use, what products to use, and that's just gonna come with a lot of research and a lot of practice. Okay, so I've got it all mixed up. Now I want to pour it on the surface. So what I do, I'll pour it in the middle, and then I'm gonna scrape my edges, and you'll notice I'm pouring that into the middle of my product. I'm not scraping the edges and coming over here and pouring it on the side. Because what could happen is this part here could possibly not be mixed up as well. So now, because I've not put it into the larger amount of products, that little small area right there could actually remain sticky because it wasn't stirred up properly. Always empty out your bucket inside of the big area of your product. Next, we're gonna take our trial, and we're gonna trowel it out. And these trowels are really good. I really like them because they're made to be used at a certain angle. And if you just get this top of this trowel flat, your angle is gonna be perfect. That's gonna leave just enough product on your surface. So I'll spread it over the surface first. I'm not gonna push it over the edge quite yet. Now this trowel is leaving just enough product on the surface to let the epoxy do its thing. All right, so we're gonna turn it upside down. All that product's gonna run down, which is gonna leave me with some clean teeth. All right, so it's time to chop. Got my chop brush. And what I'm gonna do first is I'm going to load up my chop brush, kind of prime it first, because I don't wanna go in there with a dry brush, because all I'll end up doing is pulling off the material. All right, so when I go in with my chop brush, I'm gonna go in at about a 45-degree angle. I'm not gonna go straight up and down. I'm gonna go in at an angle, so when I chop, I'm using the heel of the brush, all right? And I'm gonna chop very random. I don't wanna chop in any sort of a pattern. I don't wanna do this, okay? Because that's gonna leave a pattern on my surface, and that's not what I wanna do. So I'm just gonna chop. Don't be scared of the material. Just get in there and chop. This is one more layer of insurance that we are getting a good mixture of our product. All right, so now I'm gonna address my edges. I'm gonna come in here, use that brush, get my edges. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I'm a huge fan of using my hands. I really like to use the hands to spread my material and also to get it over the edge. I just like to be able to feel it. I can feel some voids, and I don't ever have to worry about brush hairs. So I take my hand, and I take it very softly. I'm not really moving the product a lot. I'm not using the sides of my hand to where I'm getting dry spots. I'm just using the palm and the tips of my fingers. Now, you do not have to use your hand. This is just a preference that I like to do. I also like it because I can get my edges and I can help the epoxy roll over those edges and then run my fingers up underneath so that epoxy will roll and drip back off of the edge and not create a ledge. Now it's time to torch. All right, so torching is gonna take care of any type of surface bubbles that are coming up due to the mixing process. Stone Coat Countertop was formulated to be able to release the bubbles very easy with the torch. But if you're using a different product other than Stone Coat, make sure that you read your instructions. Not all epoxies can be torched. Some are flammable. So make sure you do your research and you know your product. All right, if you torch, you're gonna come in about 1.5 inches away from the surface, and you're just gonna do it very quickly. And you're ready to go. Took care of all my bubbles. All right, so this is ready for any kind of really fun finish that I'm gonna go from here. This is what we call our color coat because it's our first layer of epoxy and we're adding colors to it. So this is often referred to as the color coat. After this dries or cures for 24 hours, we will then come in with what we call a flood coat. A flood coat is the exact same mixing instructions, except we're not going to add any color. It's going to be a clear coat. We're flooding it with a clear coat. Now, the reason we do this is when you add colorants, spray paints, mica powders, any of that, when you add that to your epoxy or your color coat, what you're doing is you're actually breaking down the integrity of that epoxy. It's not really made to have all of those colorants put in it, so we're weakening it just a little bit. So what we do is with the flood coat, now we're coming back with the pure product and we're increasing our durability and we're also giving it one more layer of depth. Okay, so it's flood coat time. We've let our color coat set for 24 hours and now it's ready to be lightly sanded and prepped and clean for the flood coat. So you'll want to take 220 and you're just going to scuff sand. What you're trying to do is create a mechanical bond between your first layer of epoxy and the flood coat. Be very careful when you're sanding your edges because your edges are very, very thin. There's not a lot of product on those edges, so you can burn through them really quick. I never use a orbital sander. I always hand sand my edges. Now, the good thing about being able to sand your color coat is you can address any little imperfections in your color coat. If you have little dimples or if you may have little imperfections of little highs and lows, don't worry about that because once you scuff sand it and you pour your flood coat, you won't see any of those imperfections. I'll clean off my surface with isopropyl alcohol and get ready to do the flood coat. All right, so on the flood coat, we're gonna use the exact same procedures as we did in our color coat. 3 ounces per square foot, part A and part B. If you're doing a white finish, remember you're gonna wanna use the art coat instead of the regular formula epoxy. Part B first. Again, we're doing a little over 1 square foot, so I'm gonna be using 4 ounces because we're measuring it at 3 ounces per square foot. Again, we're gonna mix for 2 minutes, and if we're doing a bigger amount, of course, we would be using our drill. When I do a flood coat, I like to use all clean buckets. You can use your buckets over and over again when you're doing your color coat because what will happen is as soon as you finish pouring, what you'll do is turn your bucket upside down, leave it a couple of days, and then it's gonna just pop right out and you'll have a really clean bucket. But for flood coats, I really do like to use brand new buckets. Again, I'm scraping my edges and stirring often so that I'm taking all that material that's on the edge of my bucket, mixing it up thoroughly so I don't have any sticky spots. All right, so we're gonna pour it out, scraping my edges, making sure that product goes into the mixture. All right, so after I pour my material, then I'll take my trowel. I'll trowel it out. At this point, you can decide to either use your chop brush to get the trowel lines out, or you can use your hand. I like to use my hand. So I'm gonna run my fingers over the edges, and you don't have to push a lot of product over that edge. You just wanna make sure they're all covered evenly. Now we're gonna torch. I'm gonna torch it 3 times, each time waiting about 3 to 5 minutes between torching. After that, I'm going to turn off any of the airflow in the room so that that surface doesn't develop ripples. Also, I'll turn off the light. What happens when the light is on, bugs will see the light in the reflection and they're attracted, and then you'll end up with a Jurassic Park type of a finish because you have all the bugs. Also, I don't really worry too much about dust bunnies because once my flood coat dries, cures 24 hours, what I'm gonna do now is come in with a product called the Ultimate Top Coat. And that is a fabulous, fabulous product. It comes in both a natural matte finish or it comes in a high gloss finish. And what that does, it's a roll-on product, and it just takes the durability of the epoxy to the next level. Very high heat resistance, very, very high scratch resistance, and it just really gives the ultimate protection. So the reason I don't worry too much about the dust bunnies in my flood coat is because I'm going to, again, scuff sand, get out any little imperfections, and then when I roll that UTC on there, it's gonna lay out and give a beautiful finish. I do have 2 videos, one on matte and one on gloss, on how to apply the UTC. And again, we will link it in the descriptions below. So check that out. Okay guys, I hope you liked this video. Give me a thumbs up, hit the bell for future notifications, and subscribe to our channel. We do appreciate every one of you that watch our videos. Now that you've got the basics down, my best advice to you guys is practice, practice, practice. Also, embrace your imperfections. If a finish doesn't turn out exactly like you've envisioned it, it's okay, because you are creating functional art and you need to embrace the fact that it's not going to be perfect. Nature is not perfect. Don't give up on yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. Enjoy the process. It is so much fun. And the more you practice, the more you're able to recreate finishes over and over again. Probably one of my biggest hints to you guys to be able to recreate what you do is video yourself. Even if you don't want to personally be on the video, set your phone up and just video your work area and talk to yourself so that when you go back and watch the video, you know exactly what you did and you'll be able to recreate that. All of these products that we used are available on my website, or there will be a link on my website on the tutorial page that'll show you where you can get all of these products. So check out my website, RK3Designs.com. All right, guys, so my words to you are, don't be scared, move forward, and be creative.